So again, if you do not wish your voice or face to appear, turn off your camera and turn off your microphone. So I'll introduce Pam Schmidt, who will get our session started today. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you, Rush. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Adult Forum, this week hosted by Creation Justice Ministry. We have two items on our agenda today. The first one will be a brief review of the Creation Justice Covenant, which you've had many opportunities to read and have a look at. There'll be an opportunity to ask any questions. Since next week, we will be asking you to approve it at our annual meeting so that we can continue with the process of becoming a Creation Justice Church. And then our second item, which will take up most of the time and will be most informative, is Jasmine Barco from EcoCycle will discuss the latest on recycling and composting. And so we're looking forward to that. So I will turn it over to Steve right now to tell you a little bit about our Creation Justice Covenant.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was asked to, before Jasmine begins, to just give a brief talk about Creation Justice Ministry and where we are right now. To remind everyone that next week we will be having a Congregational annual meeting, and one of the topics at that meeting will be formally voting to become a Creation Justice Church as part of the United Church of Christ. And when we take that vote, we will be utilizing our new Creation Justice Covenant. So a little background. This is not something new for First Plymouth Church. We've been an environmentally conscious church for a long time, for over a generation. In 1994, First Plymouth Congregational Church adopted the Whole Earth Mission Statement, and I'm just going to read that briefly to you. It was First Plymouth Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, recognizing the fragility of the Earth's ecology and sociology, and our responsibility as caretakers, declares itself to be a whole Earth church. And you've seen the Whole Earth sign. It's been there in the front entryway as you come into the church. And we've had a Whole Earth ministry since then. And now we are working toward becoming a Creation Justice Church. And on the screen right now, you can access this page via the internet. If you even just Google United Church of Christ and Creation Justice, it'll take you directly to a lot of good information about Creation Justice program as part of the United Church of Christ. And I want to hit on a couple bullet points that are on this first page that Rush has up on the screen. The second bullet point says, congregations make a commitment so serious and so sacred that it necessitates talking about God's covenant with us and with all of creation. And the third bullet point, congregationals not only be recognized as green, they become part of a larger network of churches and a larger movement to change the world. So we work not just within our church as part of becoming a Creation Justice Church, but we work with other churches. And then the fifth bullet point, which I hope everyone really connects with the covenant, is congregations foster a deeper sense of connection to God and to each other and to the world in which we live. So Rush, if you'd click there to go to the next page. Now, this describes the process of becoming a Creation Justice Church, and we are well along the process. We are at the end of the process, actually. Step one was to form an action team, which we did. We have the green team, the First Plymouth Green Team. and that was in step 1. The First Plymouth Green Team back a year ago put out a mission statement. The mission of the First Plymouth Green Team is to care for God's creation throughout the First Plymouth community, including in the management of its building and grounds, worship services, programming, our personal habits, and service to our wider community. And it goes on from there. So this is a process that's been ongoing. You know your mission team has been in action, and the Green Team has been in action. And as you look down here now, as Rush has paged down, if you'll page down to further, Rush, step 3 is to draft a creation covenant. And the Green Team, along with the Whole Earth Ministry, which is now the Creation Justice Ministry, drafted a creation justice covenant in this spring. And the last thing that we're going to do, if you notice step 4, is to vote to adopt that covenant, and then we'll submit an application to the church, the United Church of Christ, I mean the organization. So Rush, if you would go ahead and put the covenant up on the screen. So this is the First Plymouth Creation Justice Covenant, and we will be voting to accept this and becoming a Creation Justice Church at the Congregational meeting, which Rush already mentioned, and so did Pam, which we will be having next week. Pam, does that seem like that covers, can you think of anything else to add?
No, that sounds good. I just want to tell everybody that you have access to this covenant through the update. So if you have any questions about it between now and next Sunday, please contact Steve or me or Jan McCoy. We'll be happy to field your questions. And we hope that you'll be ready to approve this step forward for us next Sunday.
So unless there are any questions right now about the covenant, I will send this over to Nancy Rosenberg to introduce our guest speaker for this adult forum.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciated some of those details. I found it very helpful. So thank you. Yes, I am pleased to be able to introduce our speaker. Before I give you a few details, I just wanted to comment that one of the things we were hoping to do today is to invite people to bring some of their wishful or uncertain recycling items to the meeting, and part of our question and answer will be with Jasmine as far as, is this recyclable, and getting some of those questions answered. So if you have some items or you think of some of those items that you've always wondered about, we're going to have an opportunity to be able to get our questions answered. So I just wanted to remind you of that. EcoCycle is one of the oldest and largest nonprofit recyclers and zero waste management organizations in the U.S. and has an international reputation as a pioneer and innovator, and that's right here in Boulder. And so we're really fortunate to be able to be having this resource available to us. Jasmine is an environmental designer, and she's trained in architecture, resource efficiency, and urban design with a love for graphic design, outreach, and engagement. I found it real interesting. She started her journey at the age of 5 when she emigrated from Peru to America. And life lessons on adaptability and open-mindedness, which we can all learn, have led her to travel to over 20 countries. So we are very fortunate to have Jasmine with us to present some of this information. First Plymouth is looking at upgrading our recycling and hopefully, possibly composting options when the church opens. So we want to be able to really get current information so we can be as efficient in really taking care of God's creation as best as possible. So thank you so much, Jasmine, for joining us. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to present this presentation and just talk trash with all of you. Let me share my screen here. This presentation will be made available to everyone. I have shared the link already, so please feel free to go back and check it out and visit the links in there. So a brief agenda, we'll be talking about who is EcoCycle, where does our stuff go, how does it work, any local resources, and next steps. So as Nancy mentioned, EcoCycle is one of the largest and oldest nonprofit recyclers in the nation. They started in 1976, and they do so many amazing things. They have a business department which picks up one of the first curbside recycling programs in the nation, as well as the first curbside composting pickup services. They run and operate the Boulder County Recycling Center, as well as started one of the first in the nation Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, which is just a one-stop shop place where you can drop off any hard to recycle things like mattresses, yoga mats, bicycles, refrigerators, toilets, many different things. We have a robust schools program which does a lot of environmental education in Boulder County. And I am a part of the campaigns department working in Denver to increase Denver's very low recycling rate, which is actually now 23%. At the time that this picture was taken, it was 20%. When we first started working in Denver, the recycling rate was 18%. And their goal for 2020 is to reach the national average, which is 34%. I'm sad to say that we're not there yet, but there is hope, and the way that we can really reach that is through composting more, because the city did an analysis of what went to the landfill from Denver households and found that 50% of what was sent to the landfill could have been composted. So that really is the big chunk that can get us to above average and can start to get Denver recognized as the leader in zero waste. So why zero waste? So a lot of people think zero waste is actually zero waste, but its technical definition is 85% diversion or recycling and composting or more. And zero waste just keeps the materials out of the landfill, creates jobs, keeps money in the economy, conserves natural resources, and I think most important, it helps combat climate change. And we'll look into how it does that soon. And zero waste is refusing certain items, reusing instead, recycling, composting, and utilizing resources like hard to recycle material locations or recycling hazardous waste. So where does it go in Colorado? Our landfill, the largest landfill that we have is the Denver Arapahoe Disposal Site. So you can see it here listed on the screen. And it's actually the 5th or 6th largest landfill in the nation, which is just amazing. It's over 2,300 acres and set to be open for another 130 years. What's crazy about landfilling in Colorado is that it's very cheap to do so. In the East Coast and West Coast, it costs anywhere from $50 to $150 per ton to bury 1 ton of waste. In Europe, it's anywhere from $200 to $250 a ton. But here in Colorado, it's $16 a ton in the Front Range. In the mountains, where the area is more precious, it costs around $45 a ton. So why? It's because we have a lot of land, and with our arid conditions, it's quote unquote optimal to bury all of our waste. And so we are burying a lot. Recycling goes to a machine called a materials recovery facility, or MRF it's what we call it in the business. So there are 4 MRFs in Colorado. There's one in Boulder that was created by Boulder County through Boulder County fees and is operated by EcoCycle. There are 2 in Denver. This is operated by Waste Management, and this one is run and operated by Alpine, now called GFL, or Green for Life. And then this one in Colorado Springs is run and operated by Best Way Recycling. So all of these different machines have different technologies in them, which constitute whether something is or isn't recyclable, which is why it can get a little bit confusing for people. If you live somewhere else, like say in Fort Collins or somewhere in the mountains, most likely these have a transfer station. So that is where everyone's trash and recycling goes to, so that they can get a larger amount and then send it to one of the 4 MRFs or their nearest landfill. In composting, the largest industrial composter that we have is A1 Organics, 45 minutes northeast from Denver. And they take in things like meat, bone, and dairy that can be composted because their compost piles reach up to 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Alpine Recycling, or the GFL, does have a compost facility. However, I believe it's just yard waste. Most landfills will also have a compost operation on site as well, but it is just landfill and it is just yard waste and not food waste. So how does it work? In simplest terms, landfill is just a lot of trash compacted as much as possible and buried. So this is a very simple drawing of a landfill that our schools department uses. So as you can see, there is a clay layer, and the modern landfills are now required to have plastic liners. These plastic liners are as thick as a credit card. The more sustainable landfills have 2 plastic liners. There's a couple of drainage layers, and there's usually a pipe to collect methane. And the drainage layers are for leachate or trash juice. So basically, trash is just dumped into the landfill, and then a huge machine with these spikes in their wheels or tires runs over the trash to compact it as much as possible, and then they cover it daily with dirt. They used to cover it daily with glass, but we'll talk about why they don't do that anymore soon. And yeah, that's it. It's a large area. A lot of landfills will talk about how they are separating or sequestering methane and putting it back into the electrical grid. However, since it's such a large area, it's not very well controlled. And just think of every single thing you've ever put in the trash. That methane gas is not clean. So only about 20% of the methane gas gets put back into the energy grid, and 80% is lost. There is a better way to get biogas, and that is with a biogas facility. And I'm so happy to say that our biogas facility, which is called the Heartland Biogas Facility, about an hour northeast from the Denver metro area, was recently purchased by Platte River Biogas. So this facility has actually been sitting empty for the past 3 years in this weird limbo, but someone finally bought it. It's amazing is that they usually take in a lot of dairy waste, so cow poop. And the cow poop then goes into the biogas digester. Without the biogas digester, what farmers usually do is they set up a lagoon where the cow poop goes in there, and that creates a lot of methane that is then sent into the environment. So methane is 84 times stronger than carbon dioxide. And we're always talking about carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, but methane is one of the things that could be easily overlooked. But thanks to this biogas facility that we have, all of the dairy waste is going there, as well as some grocery store waste, some waste from the Purina factory is going in there, and everything is in a controlled area. So we get clean methane gas efficiently taken to the energy grid. So here are the 5 things to keep it out of the landfill. Electronics and paint. Colorado actually has bans on the landfill for that. And then anything that can be recycled, composted, reused. We shouldn't be burying it forever. Why not give it a second life instead? So the materials recovery facility, this is the Boulder County Materials Recovery Facility. This area to the right, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but the area to the right is specifically for all of the schools and public education. So there's like a viewing room where 5th grade students can come in and view a video of how, view this video actually, the Boulder County, let me see, the Boulder County Recycling Center leading the way towards zero, or leading the, I forget what the video is called, but it's there. You can see it. And what's cool about this video is that it features all of the different technologies that the recycling facility has. And so on this right part, and even like through this little like tunnel that's around from the left part, there are a bunch of displays. It's focused on education. All the 3 other materials recycling or materials recovery facilities don't have this education component to it. And so since it was created through Boulder County money, its main emphasis is to educate students and just everyone. So as you cross this like tunnel, you then get to see the machine and how it works and operates on the left side of the building. And there's a viewing platform that you can go and like see everything that's going on. Okay, for some reason I'm not, here we go. So the Boulder, well, this is like one of the technologies that we have, but every single MRF will have different technologies. So there's, for example, this technology, which is an optical sorter. So what's happening here is on the left side of the screen, a laser is being shot out into the conveyor belt. And then based on the reflectivity that it gets, it will send a signal to an air jet on the right side of the machine. And so on the right side of the machine, you can see certain plastic pieces being shot up through that gust of air. So that is how that is separating that. I believe this side is PETE, which is #1 plastic. On the farther side, it's looking for a different kind of plastic. So that's definitely one of the more complicated technologies that MRFs have. You can also separate glass with an optical sorter, as well as certain cartons. For magnets, or for steel and tin, we use magnets. And then for aluminum, since aluminum is not magnetic, we use called an eddy current separator, which are essentially 2 magnets working against each other to create a current so that an aluminum piece is flung out into a different conveyor belt. We have people working at the MRF, but the main job is to remove contaminants or things that would harm the machine. But what's really amazing is that recycling creates 9 times the jobs than landfill. And I've actually been to the landfill a couple of times, and I asked them what they think about recycling, and they said, oh, we think it's great. We want people to recycle more because that ensures that we have a job for a longer span of time. So I thought that was very, very powerful. So here are the top 5 things to recycle. Glass is the first closed loop in Colorado. So remember how I was telling you that landfills would use broken glass to line or to cover, to use as daily cover for all the trash that they compacted. So the glass is usually one of the last things that comes out of the recycling facility, and it usually picks up a lot of tiny plastic pieces, a bunch of shredded paper, a bunch of dust, a bunch of fluff. And by the end of the process of like separation, it doesn't look like glass. It's like a big pile of dirty, gross stuff. There's a company called Momentum Recycling that came from Salt Lake City and opened up a facility in Broomfield, Colorado. That facility has a lot of different optical sorters, and they focus on buying back that dirty glass from the MRFs. washing it, drying it, and separating it by color. And once they separate it by color, it's separated into clear glass, amber glass, and green glass. And we have 2 bottling manufacturers in Colorado, one in Windsor and one in Wheat Ridge. And those bottling manufacturers buy back this glass. They melt in their super hot furnaces to make new glass bottles again. So glass in Colorado can be put in your recycle bin and be back in the grocery store shelves in as soon as 60 days. That is the first closed loop that we have in Colorado. And it was only because this company came in to clean up the glass, and they saw that there was an opportunity because we have bottling manufacturers here. Second thing to recycle is aluminum. Aluminum comes from a mineral called bauxite ore, and in order to have this bauxite ore, people have to cut down a bunch of trees in like tropical areas like the Amazon, China, Indonesia, Australia, and they have to do surface mining. And 4 to 7 tons of bauxite ore is equal to 1 ton of aluminum. So just imagine, we have devastated the landscape through extracting this mineral, and then just imagine how much energy it takes to make a rock into aluminum as we know and love it. It's just a ton of energy. And the amazing thing about recycling metals is that it never loses its value. It just gets melted and made into something new indefinitely. So it doesn't make sense to bury it forever. It makes sense to melt it and make it into something else again. Which is why number 5 is recycle your cans. Steel and tin can also be recycled indefinitely. And for things like scrap metal, things that are not aluminum cans, so things that are like wire hangers or something like a barbell or even a lawnmower, it's best to Google scrap metal recycler near me, and you will find a place where you can take those materials to, and they will even give you money for recycling it, because metal is just that valuable. Like I said, it just gets melted and made into a new metal item again. Cardboard is a little bit different. So cardboard comes from trees. Paper comes from trees. And since it's an organic material, each time it gets recycled, it goes to the paper mill. And at the paper mill, it gets mixed in with water and basically gets put into a blender and is made into a pulp. That pulp then becomes new paper. And each time it gets recycled, its fibers get shorter and shorter, meaning the material gets weaker and weaker. So it can start off strong like a cardboard box, and then by the end of, or by the middle of its life, it could be like a white piece of office paper. Then it could be like a newspaper. Then it could be like one of those like cartons that you buy your eggs in. But then at the end of its life cycle, it'll always, always, always be a paper towel, tissue, or napkin. And by that point, you got it dirty with something, with food or water, and it's best to compost that instead. A lot of people are putting their paper towels, tissues, and napkins into the recycling stream, but that can't be recycled anymore. It's dirty and it's too weak to recycle. So let's return it to the earth so it can be made back into soil. And then cartons. Cartons are actually the best example of producer responsibility that we have here in the US. There were 6 or 7 different carton manufacturers that came together and said, we want to make our product recyclable. So they put their heads together and they came up with Tetra Pak. So Tetra Pak you can buy in like milk cartons, juice cartons, broth cartons, anything that is like a silver lining or aluminum lining in the middle on the inside, then with a carton lining, then with a plastic lining. And if you look at the bottom, it'll say Tetra Pak. The thing that makes this recyclable is that they don't use adhesives. They stamp all of those materials together, which is why you'll see this kind of like seam along the carton. And the amazing thing about producer responsibility, and this is what Europe is doing, and this is where our recycling efforts are going, is extended producer responsibility. Imagine this, the manufacturer puts out a material into the world and they actually buy it back. And this is what the producers of Tetra Pak are doing. They're buying back their own products instead of just putting it out into the world and then saying, that's it, we're done, we're not going to deal with it anymore. So they recycle it themselves. These are the guidelines from, can you see? Okay. These are the guidelines from Denver Recycles. And so I just wanted to go over them really quick because I get a couple of questions around that. So on the left side under bottles and cans, you will see that all of the plastic bottles, all of the bottles don't have any lids. So lids is actually one of the #1 questions that I get. I have to double check with the Denver MRFs, but in Boulder, we always encourage people to leave their caps on the bottle. The main reason they say no lids is because too many people put their water bottles or whatever bottles in the recycling full of liquid. When they say no lids, it ensures that all the liquid falls out. That's the thing. Like, they don't want any food and they don't want any liquid in the recycling stream. So saying no lids ensures that it falls out, and that's fine. But we usually say if it's plastic on plastic, it's fine. The problem is when it's glass on metal. So like this glass can. How can the machine say, okay, here's the glass and here's the metal and separate them when they're connected? It can't. So please think in terms of the machine, like how the machine separates things with the various technologies. It has magnets for the metal, and like the glass will be eventually broken up and separated with the other glass pieces. Let's see, something like a wine bottle, just make sure the cork is out. If it's like materials, it can be together, but if it's not like materials, please include them separately. Some corks are recyclable, some corks are actually trash because there's a lot of fake corks made of plastic with wine bottles as well. So boxes, make sure to flatten them. One of the first things that gets separated at the MRF are 2D items from 3D items. So if you have like a smashed aluminum can or a smashed plastic bottle, it can easily go in with the 2D items, and that will contaminate our paper bale. And then whoever we try to sell that paper to will be like, hey, there's a bunch of aluminum and plastic pieces in here. Please, we don't want that. And so that's not good for us. With paper, so here you can see the chicken broth. That's the Tetra Pak example. I always get asked the question about the plastic envelope windows. That's okay. You can leave it in there because at the paper mill, they have screens to take out any tape pieces or any other plastic pieces. And they also have magnets to take out things like staples or staplers. So that's all fine. And then plastics is by far the most confusing thing. A lot of people say, we have a recycling problem. But the thing is, no, we have a plastics problem. Recycling is just fine. So with plastics, we always say bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. If it's 3D, the stronger the better. Everyone always asks about the numbers. The markets that are actually buying back different numbers are 1s, 2s, and 5s. So plastics numbers 1s, 2s, and 5s. All the other ones don't really have a market, unfortunately. Plastic is unlike metal or glass, which can be recycled indefinitely, and even unlike paper, which can be recycled 5 to 7 times, plastics can only be recycled 1 or 2 other times tops. And what's really shocking is that out of all of the plastic that's ever been created, only about 9% has been recycled. And the things that it gets recycled into aren't exactly the best things either. So like plastic water bottles can be shredded up and made into fibers, and those fibers then become polyester or other like fibers for your clothing. But the problem with that is when you wash your clothing, microfibers get out into the water supply. Our wastewater treatment facilities don't have the technology to separate things at the micro level. It goes back into the water, it's in the soil, we're eating it, animals have it, insects have it, and we have it in us too. Which is super scary. And then there was that study made by the professor over at Mines, at the School of Mines, who looked at rainwater and found microplastics in the rainwater along the Front Range. So we don't have a recycling problem, we have a plastics problem. So things to keep out of your recycle bin: food and drinks. These can pose a health hazard to our employees. You have to remember, we have real live people working at the MRFs. And if something is super dirty with food, it might have created mold already, and we don't want our employees breathing in the mold, or it can attract insects and we don't want them getting stung. So please keep in mind that real life people work at this machine. So please, no food and drinks. Scrap metal can harm the machine. So as we covered previously, just Google scrap metal recycler near me and you can actually get some money for your scrap metal. So other things that are majority scrap metal are washers and dryers, for example, or furnaces. Plastic film or plastic bags actually are so lightweight, and as the conveyor belts are going by so fast, it can create a gust of wind, and it will easily be sucked up in between the machine's gears and jam the machine. So in Boulder County alone, we have to turn off the machine twice a day only to cut all of the plastic bags out, and it's incredibly inefficient. Plastic can be to grocery stores. There's a company called Trex that creates those wood, fake wood composites for decking. They actually buy back a lot of plastic film. They melt it and put it into their product, which is amazing. Tanglers, so cords or Christmas lights, hoses, anything that can get tangled in the machine, we don't want. And shredded paper. Shredded paper is a huge shock to a lot of people, but imagine this. The recycle truck goes to your house, puts all of your recycle bin into the back of the truck, and then it goes to the recycling, to the MRF, drops all of those things on the floor. Then someone has to come along, pick up a bunch of those recyclables and feed it to the machine. What happens to the shredded paper? It has the confetti effect. It goes everywhere. And it's way too small for the machine to even pick it up and identify it as a 2D item. So I always have a palm rule. If it's bigger than your palm, it can easily 100% go through the machine in its processes and make it to where it needs to go. But if it's smaller than your palm, for example, a plastic cutlery, a plastic fork. Yes, it's as tall as your palm, but it doesn't have the width. And that's why things like straws aren't recyclable, because it will literally fall in between the cracks of the machine. Same thing with plastic forks, plastic spoons, plastic knives. It'll just fall in between the machine. You could technically recycle it if you set up a box and you collect nothing but those plastic cutleries. But again, two things make something recyclable. One, can it go through the machine? And two, is there a market for it? So you have to keep those two things in mind. So composting is a lot easier. We usually just like to say if it was once alive, it can be made back into compost. You can do things like backyard composting. The city has an amazing brochure booklet on vermicomposting, which is composting with worms. And then the city of Denver, of course, has a compost pickup program. And a couple of other cities in Colorado are also starting to have curbside compost pickup, which is amazing. But the compost that goes to A1 Organics gets made into this product at the lower right hand of the screen, and that's called Denver's own EcoGrow Compost. And it's amazing because you can help close the loop. You can buy this at A Hardware for $7 a bag, and it's my favorite compost by far out there because I know that it's local, and I'm helping support that system. Because the other thing about recycling is, yeah, it's fine if we can separate it and if there's a market, but if no one is buying that product, then it doesn't make sense to keep making it. So we as consumers have to support that blue product and have to buy things that are made from recycled content, or in this case, buy things that are, buy the locally made compost. So there are a lot of different compost providers. GFL does pick up for commercial properties and some HOAs as well. There's also a couple of other companies like Wompost who started in Aurora, or Scrap Smile High, that's been around and has expanded beyond the Denver metro region. And then there are even 3 other companies more. There's Lone Tree Composting that just started. There's Denver Compost Collective, and there's Colorado, and they all have different pricing mechanisms or structures. So I've included some of that information here as well. So the top 5 things to compost: food waste, especially if it's going to a commercial compost, or actually no, just food waste, yard waste, paper towels, dishes, and napkins. You could put that in your backyard compost as well. Meat, bone, and dairy, that is the thing that needs to go to the industrial compost facility. It would be good if you put it in your backyard compost, because it can attract animals, and your backyard compost does not get hot enough to break down these things. And then clean wood products like popsicle sticks, chopsticks, for example, can also either go to your backyard compost or to the industrial compost service. It'll just probably take a while for it to break down in your backyard compost, because again, it doesn't get hot enough to break all that stuff down. And mainly for backyard compost, it's like fresh food waste, so not really cooked food waste. Again, because that can attract animals in there. But you can definitely put cooked food into the industrial compost. So the guidelines for Denver: food scraps, non-recyclable papers. You do have to be careful with that, with the paper plate, because most paper plates, unless they are BPI certified compostable, will have a plastic lining on there. And we don't want any plastic in the compost, because plastic does not break down. It turns into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics, and that's it. It never turns back into soil. And the reason is because it's made from oil and gas. That's where plastic comes from. Any yard waste can be composted, and then miscellaneous items like that, popsicle stick, or chopsticks. You do have to be careful with tea. A lot more tea manufacturers are using plastic for their tea bags. So definitely, whenever possible, please drink loose leaf tea, because it ensures that you're not drinking microplastics. So the top 5 things to keep out of your compost bin, it's feces or pet waste. The A1 Organics facility is not certified to process feces, so please don't put it in there. Plastics, please watch out for the plastic fruit stickers. I've given up on my family, and whenever they bring back fruit or vegetables, I make sure to take out all of the fruit stickers before they put it in our compost bin and freeze it, because then it's impossible to take out those plastic stickers when it's frozen. So please keep an eye out for that and be cognizant that these plastic stickers are indeed plastic. Treated wood, so anything that's painted or has a bunch of like chemical and plastic residues, we want in the commercial composting. Styrofoam is made of plastic. There's a lot of to-go food containers in styrofoam, and sadly, a lot of people put that in the compost. And then metal, it doesn't turn back into soil, but you can melt it and you can make new metal items out of it. So please recycle that instead. So here are some local resources for you. Hard to recycle items. Here are the different places that you can take different things to. So like mattresses is the Red Star, that's in North Denver. Electronics, we have Blue Star Recyclers, which are in different areas of the state. And the Green Star is Sustainability, which is the nearest hard to recycle center for folks in Denver. So Sustainability takes things like, let's see here, they also have a location in Arvada. They take things like scrap metal, single stream recycling, vegetable oil, books, fire extinguishers, cell phones, various electronic wastes, because they've partnered with Blue Star Recyclers as well. So it's an amazing resource. Definitely go and check it out and take your things there. Let me try. Okay. Hazardous waste. As I mentioned, it is illegal to put paint in the landfill, so there is a program called Paint Care. You can type in your zip code and find your nearest drop-off site, and you can drop it off for free, because with paint, usually you pay a fee up front to recycle, to be able to get rid of this leftover product for free. Boulder County has a hazardous waste materials facility, which is actually amazing. You can go there and pick up paint for free if you have a project. They have some cool things to get from there. And then there's also the Rooney Road Recycling Center, which is in Golden. They take in a bunch of materials as well, hazardous materials, but their hours are very limited. So I would definitely check them out online. And so what can you do with hazardous waste in Denver? You can call this number, and it's a $15 copay, and you have to have at least 3 different materials or at least 25 pounds of one material. So there are some rules around that, but they will come to your house and they will pick up your hazardous waste from you. Denver also has an amazing recycling directory. So on the left, I just put in batteries just for an example. And if you keep scrolling down, the list keeps going on. So it's really cool. It tells you, where you can take certain things, especially if they are really random, like mattress or furniture. It'll let you know where you can take it. And on the right is a picture of the Denver Trash and Recycling app. I definitely recommend getting this, especially if you live in Denver. You just type in your address and it will tell you when your collection is, so like when composting is coming, when trash is coming, when recycling is coming, when large item pickup is coming. And they also have the recycling directory built into the app. So it's very easy to use. Denver also has a recycling drop-off. They accept single stream recycling and composting. However, you have to be a Denver resident to use the drop-off site. So they have recently started asking for your ID or something that has your name with a Denver address on there. So next steps. What can you do to move the needle? Well, be informed. Visit your city's website for information about your local waste services. The cities usually do things like a leaf pickup, a Christmas tree mulch event, electronics pickup, a hazardous waste pickup. They do a ton of different things. So step number 1, be informed about what your city has to offer. Step number 2, EcoCycle has a Zero Waste Denver campaign, which is twofold. Step 1 is to change the waste system in Denver for single family homes. Right now, recycling and trash are provided at free through property taxes, and composting is $9.75 a month. Our campaign says, hold up, if anything is free, it should be recycling and composting, and trash should be the thing that's charged for based on the amount that's sent to the landfill. That's called a pay-as-you-throw system. So the least amount of trash that you generate, which is what we're trying to incentivize, the least that you're charged. And the more trash that you generate, the more that you're charged. And then the second step of the Zero Waste Denver campaign is to provide recycling and composting to everyone, so including businesses and apartments. We just want everyone to have the service. Boulder passed something like that recently called the Universal Zero Waste Ordinance, and so they have a lot of resources and amazing lessons learned that Denver can learn from. And the third thing is to be an eco leader. I always say an eco leader is a person who's not afraid to stick their hand in a trash can to save an aluminum can to put it in the right place. It's just a person that is informed, that has gotten the presentation that you all just got, and has direct access to me and or other amazing staff at EcoCycle and can ask whatever questions. We're here to help. And we're here to provide resources in whatever project that you want to undertake, like, for example, creating a green team at your church, or starting a green team at a school, or your favorite yoga club, or whatever it is. We're here to help. You can also learn more through our Zero Waste Denver video series. It's super cool. We've interviewed a lot of different city council members as well. And here you can see the lineup of the videos. They're short 5 to 10 minute videos. And then Recycle Colorado is a 501c3, which different city entities, different nonprofits, different for-profit businesses are together, all with the vision of transforming Colorado into a national leader in zero waste. And so they've done a bunch of amazing things. They're very strong in their policy. And this year we were able to pass the End Market Development Bill to encourage more companies like Momentum to come into Colorado and close more loops. And last year we passed the Front Range Waste Diversion Act, which actually offers up grant money. It charges 50 cents out of every ton sent to the landfill. And from that money, at the beginning, I think it was at the beginning of the year, we were able, or actually not too long ago, maybe a couple of months ago. This year's been kind of weird. But we were able to give out money. We had different requests for proposals go out and had a bunch of different proposals submitted for grant money to increase recycling and composting. So anyone can apply if you're in a neighborhood organization, or if you like a school or a city. It's just for anyone and everyone to advance Colorado further up the zero waste ladder. So it's going to be 2 grant cycles per year. The second grant cycle, which is going to be in January, is actually focused more around construction and demolition waste and what we can do there. And that's it. This is actually a cool picture back from the 1970s. EcoCycle started off, creating one of the first recycling pickup services from households, but it was a group of people that pulled their money together, and they didn't have enough money for actual waste trucks, so they decided to buy school buses and retrofit the school buses by taking out the school bus seats, and they drove those around the city picking up everyone's recycling, which is super cool. And that's my presentation. Do we have any questions?
Jasmine, thank you very much. That was very informative, and I'm going to turn off the recording now and open the question and answer session.
Great, thank you.